We're always trying to relate habitat improvements, deer habitat improvements, and hunting improvements to actual risk levels and how you can actually install some of these features on your land without spooking the deer. Because if you have 40 acres and you improve 40 acres for deer and attractions everywhere, well, then you can't possibly step foot on the property without spooking deer, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, evening. And if you spook deer, your property quickly becomes nocturnal. And what I found is deer can relate to a difference of 100 yards. So your neighbor's 40 that is unhunted, more of a park-like effect, but unhunted, no hunting pressure. Yours is high hunting pressure. Well, the deer are just going to live all over your neighbors during the daylight. And you don't even need an attraction over there. So the lowest hole in the bucket is how you hunt and your hunting pressure and how it's projected on the land. So each one of the improvements you make has a risk level. So I wanted to talk about those risk levels and the reward that each one of those improvements has so that you can balance what's important on your land and really how you manage your hunt. Because if you look at each one of these features of where you can apply pressure and where you can't and the risk reward level, then it helps you understand how critical it is for you to go onto your property and off of your property, how you move around your property. And I'm talking to your hunting season, because if your season opens October 1st, you start slowing your activities down around Labor Day, or cease activities by September 15th, you can have a great run hunt. What you do in August, July, January, February, March has nothing to do with how good of a hunting season you're going to have. We're all over our property here in Minnesota and partially Wisconsin through the off season. We do anything we want on it because we're building a property for the fall and not for the summer, spring, and winter. It's great to find sheds, for example, antlers, but I don't want to build a property that's so good in February, March, and April that we attract all the, in late January, that we attract all the sheds in the area and shed antlers. Because typically, if you have that great winter parcel with lots of thermal cover, that's not where those deer are at during November and December and October. So bottom line is, though, let's look at each one of these attractions. I left the most attractive, highest potential reward for the last. And if you look at these, kind of ranked them in order where I look at risk and reward. And it's pretty interesting because a water hole, for example, fairly low risk on the scale of risk, but pretty high reward as it works for attraction during the hunting season. So I want you to think about that. But number one, a bedding area. You create cuttings, create hinge cuts, total canopy removal, hardwood harvest, timber harvest. You're changing the timber for the better. You're getting more stems per acre, more hardwood regeneration, woody shrub tips, briars, whatever it might be. You're getting diversity in there. And that can be great, but the thing about a bedding area is it's very broad. You could have average bedding quality habitat spread in the right areas of your property, and it can be an incredible parcel because you manage your hunt, you manage the food sources, you manage how you project your hunting pressure on the property, and it ends up being a great hunting parcel, even if you don't have the best of bedding areas. So that's why I give it a 5 out of 10. You have to have some type of cover to hold deer, but the cover isn't necessarily what drives the deer herd. And a lot of times there's cover somewhere, there's good cover somewhere. But it's that combination of everything you need for whitetail habitat and hunting and to find a good herd and attract a good herd that it takes to actually attract deer, as opposed to just bedding. But bedding, mid-range for reward. You have to have some type of bedding, and there are some really good bedding areas. Think upland cover, combination of shrubs, conifers, grasses, briars, hardwood regeneration, maybe some older trees mixed in. That gives you the best of everything. And you'll find what's pretty cool about that is you have the best wildlife area, not just deer. When you find a great wildlife area and you leave it alone, it can be a great deer bedding area. And some of those bedding areas can be a higher attraction level than that 5. I'm just talking in general, and it's very broad. It can be acres and acres and acres, not a defined spot where you're putting a bow stand out. You look down and get a shot. Hey, thanks for watching the video, and we'll be right back. But this is very important. It's a very important announcement. We have our Camp Kicking Bear event. We have it on Father's Day. It's more of a habitat day. We're going to see a feature of habitat improvements, how they will all relate to a bedding area, a water hole, food plot, bedding point, morning stands, evening stands, and then we get to take a tour around the majority of the property too. Bottom line is $350 per person times 50 people. We highly encourage you to bring your kids. After all, it's Father's Day. Those 50 spots always sell out very fast. On that same day, it's from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We have speaking events, All my sponsors kick in for that. So we'll literally be giving away a Matthews boat, a ghillie blind, and so one person will win each of those. For about 13, 14 people will win really good prizes. I could list them all, but check it out. We also have our $100 times 100 hunt raffle to a lucky hunter that'll come hunt with us the end of September for 3 nights. So really check out all that information. Look at the link in the description. You can ask Jessie. She'll help you out with any scheduling of that, and look forward to seeing you guys there. It's a great event. Every dime that's earned goes directly to Camp Kicking Bear, and even a little extra on top of that. So look forward to seeing you there. Mock scrape. I love mock scrapes. We have a mock scrape at every stand location, but we don't find that deer go 50 yards out of their way just to hit that mock scrape. What they often do though, it's a great place for a trail cam location. It's right in front of the tree stands within bow shot, and every deer that goes by goes to that. And so a deer that wanted to go through the area within 20 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, 30 yards, he goes to that scrape, and just that's the trail he uses. It defines one trail out of 3, one trail out of 4. But it doesn't take a deer that's down at the bottom of the hollow 100 yards down up to that scrape and back down again. It doesn't have the power to do that like a water hole does. You know, water is a little bit different. When they're cruising, they're thirsty, they want to go get it, and they'll go find it. Doesn't attract more deer to the land though. Just like a mock scrape, it defines movement. A mock scrape defines movement, and it's more of a 5 out of 10. That's what I mean. It's within a small area. It might attract a lot of deer. Give yourself a great bow shot. It distracts deer. They're not looking at your trail camera. They're not looking at you in the stand. Get a shot. I encourage a mock scrape at every stand location, and no more mock scrapes. Dylan ripped a mock scrape down today. We were talking about summer trail cam location. Not a mock scrape, but it's a natural scrape. So we had a camera on the scrape. The bow shot is right there. Dylan was 10 yards further, and there's a natural scrape hanging down. I don't know if it's a branch with a little teeny vine hanging down. Is that what it was?
One little busted branch, you know, where a buck had pulled it down and snapped, so it was hanging.
Yeah. And we don't want deer over there. For one, we're not getting a picture of them, but most importantly, it's taking them away from the stand location. I've been to properties where there's a mock scrape every 20 yards down their central access trail. That's a really bad thing. You're attracting bucks to your access, and then you're spooking all those deer away. Been to where there's 50 mock scrapes around a food plot, with the thought that, you know, the food plot's not attractive enough. Let's put a bunch of mock scrapes around it, and we put 50 around. We'll have every buck within 10 miles there because of all the scrapes in one spot. It's not how it works. They define movement, moderate attraction, but still very, very low risk. Mock scrapes can be anywhere in front of your stand location. Now, if you're putting that mock scrape out into a food plot, that might change the risk, and we'll talk about that in a second. Water holes, like mock scrapes, very, very low risk. Seems like the less time a deer spends in that area as part of their daily travel, the lower the risk level. For example, water hole, they might stand around and drink for a half minute. They're just hanging out, then they move through. Say in the mock scrape, they come, they rub their preorbital glands on it, and they're gone. In fact, a lot of times they might come into a water hole, take a couple drinks, the camera goes off, there's a 1 minute delay, the buck leaves to go make a mock scrape, and it's gone before the camera goes through its cycle of 45 seconds to a minute delay, and that's how long it took for them to hit the water hole and the mock scrape combined. It's just a quick stop, and they're on the way through. So they're both about a similar risk level when it comes to assessing the risk and how you actually view that in the woods and your hunt. I prefer to hunt low risk, high reward areas. A water hole during the cruising times in the rut, even in December, if it's open and you have open water and you're the only open water in the area for whatever reason, boy, not only bucks, but does, fawns, and all critters in the woods, birds and creatures, they go to that water. They're attracted to that water. So very, very high level of attraction. You could even say 8 to 10 out of 10 for attraction level. So pretty cool spot to be. Now contrast that with an orchard. Orchard, I think, is more value than a mock scrape in general because deer are coming to that area, but it's for a smaller amount of time. Sometimes if it's a large area, it's less defined, and we'll put a stand location here, we're going to shoot here. There could be apple trees 70 yards over there. But bottom line is, pretty decent attraction, but it's a limited time of the year. It's also a higher risk level. Anything associated with food is higher risk. Anytime a deer is going to sit there for 25 minutes, it's almost like they're more careful going into that location. The problem is hunters let's establish these 8 apple trees right here in this little meadow, and we're going to hunt it. And then they hunt it, they spook deer off it once or twice. Now it's not a low risk feature, it's a high risk. And finally, and it's even magnified much, much more when it comes to food, is an actual food plot. A food plot is the highest form of risk when it comes to a hunting feature where you want to track deer. It's the highest potential reward. It's 10 out of 10. It's the most attractive feature that you can add to your land. More powerful than a water hole. Because if you don't have food on your land, why are they going to the water hole? They're not going to be attracted to your land because of the water hole. They will be attracted to your land because of the food plot. If no one in your area has a food plot program, and somebody 3/4 of a mile to a mile away puts in 7 quality acres of food plots, and they slant that towards fall, and they leave it alone, they give the deer the impression they're not being hunted, guess what? You're not going to see that many deer. It might pull half the deer away or more. Sometimes people wonder, I don't know why we're not seeing any deer this year. Well, they don't have food. If you pull up an aerial photo, you look at HuntWise, you can see food plots. Did you know your neighbor had this food plot? What kind of food plot is that? Do you know your neighbor? All of a sudden come to find out that a mile away their neighbor put a bunch of food plots in, or even a half mile away. And that's where all the deer went. That's where they're all going. It's a high level of attraction, but because of that risk level, it's the one you have to be very, very careful with. High risk, high reward. And that's why when you take a really low risk, high attraction feature like a water hole, you combine that with a food plot. Very bad thing. Because a food plot is very high risk. Water hole is very low risk. So when you combine water on a food plot, what does it do? It takes that water hole and brings it to the risk level of the food source. Now, Dylan was talking about, and we do this often depending on the layout, location. He has a spot where it's a small hunting plot, and he's talking about adding a water hole off to the side. Well, hunting plot is a lot different than a 2-acre feeding plot where deer are very wary to come out in the open. You put a water hole to the side, well, they're probably not going to come there during the daylight. But some of these little hunting plots, Dylan, you've probably seen that a lot. Like a little hunting plot, they'll hit that during the daylight, even 11 o'clock, a buck passing through, a mature buck.
And the way I'm screening it off, I'm really hoping it's gonna be more of just a pass through. Whether they're on their way to food in the evening or even mid morning, they're just on their way cruising. It's gonna be a focal point, and I think that water.
It's like a light snack and water.
Yep. And I'm hoping that the screening that I'm going to be putting in there will really make them feel comfortable.
And we've done that with like almost a magnified water hole area where it's water hole's the base, but then there's a 20th of an acre around it that's in clover, and there's mock scrape off to the side, and it's kind of a one-stop shop for just a quick snack through. Yep. But when you're pulling deer like for that length of time where it's going to be a half hour they're going to sit there and feed, that's where you don't want that water hole. That's high risk area, and you're hurting the water hole because of that. Now a mock scrape, if it's a stand location, I encourage mock scrape. It's not going to hurt you or help you in that case. It's just defining where the deer might go in the field location. But they're not coming to that food plot because the mock scrape's there. They're already coming to the food plot. It's a little bit different. You know, the power of water, I encourage a mock scrape for every stand location. There might be 10 stand locations on 40 acres. You're not going to have 10 water holes on 40 acres. You're oversaturating the attraction, and that lowers the power of each water hole. So, you know, on 40 acres, you might have 3 water holes too, depending on the layout and location of other and surrounding water holes around the area. What's this all mean though? Be very wary. You know, water hole's great. You can pop in there for the afternoon or morning. It's just a quick stop. If you actually had a mock scrape on a funnel or a cruising point, quick morning hunt, afternoon hunt, you can get right in. Orchard, you might be in there in the morning feeding when you go in. So it eliminates a morning hunt. Food plot. Unless it's a small hunting plot like Dylan was talking about, and you have a major food source 200 yards away, 100 yards away, and you can get into that while deer are out in the major food source in the morning, it's not a morning spot. Small hunting plot might be, but those bigger food plots you can't. You can get in there in the afternoon, evening, and hopefully you can get out in the afternoon, you know, when it gets dark, and get out. So think about each one of these. Bedding area is more morning hunt because you have a hard time getting out or getting into it in the afternoon. You don't know where deer are at. Where if you've been in there in the morning and you want to get out, you have the luxury of being there for 3 or 4 hours in the morning. You know where deer are at. If they just pass through, if they're just feeding through, you know what direction to get out because you've been there in the woods and you're aware of your surroundings. You know where deer are at. It's a little bit easier to get out. Afternoon, you're going in blind. You're eventually going to spook a lot of deer. So these risk levels are very important to understand. You have to have food plots on private land. That's what drives a deer herd. Orchard can't drive a deer herd. Water hole, mock scrape, bedding area, that can't drive a deer herd. Food can drive a deer herd, but it also is the highest risk level. Think of that balance between risk and reward next time you're out hunting. Bottom line is everything you do on your land, think about, am I going to spook deer because of this improvement? If the answer is yes, you're probably better off not having the improvement, shrinking the improvement, relocating the improvement, screening off the improvement so you can get by it without spooking deer. But you just can't afford to spook deer. It doesn't matter if you have 500 acres or 50 or 5 acres. You can't afford to do it. You know, I think sometimes there's, you know, wealthy people that have a couple thousand acres, 1,000 acres, big ag-rich area like Iowa, Kansas, Illinois. And almost because of their hunting mistakes and the way they lay out their habitat, they need that amount of acreage because it begins to encompass their mistakes when you start to get into 600, 800 acres and larger, meaning you can blow off the deer on this 200-300 acres, but you still have 400 or 500 acres over here to hunt in that same weekend. So you can kind of hunt haphazardly and still feature success. But I want to see you take 100 acres or 50 acres and do the same that someone else does with 600 to 800. Because most people that have those large parcels are taking ATVs or spooking deer, and you can do so much better by just really taking a risk assessment, balance your risk and reward, hunting smart. Don't improve every square inch of your parcel. Make sure you have food on your parcel, and you can develop a great hunt this fall. Manage some high risk but high reward attractions by letting the deer think that it's a low risk situation when they move through the woods right in front of your bow stand for a shot this fall. Now, I don't know if you've checked out our main website lately, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, but we've really had a lot going on, including hats, books, our web class, and certainly our new seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. When you click on seed on our site, it'll take you right to our brand new site for the seed company. We have all 12 blends available. So check it all out though. I encourage you, I appreciate you checking it out. Whether you buy anything or not, really appreciate you visiting the site and seeing what's going on, and continue to watch because we have big things coming later this year.